The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today we're coming to you live from right above Two Guys Smoke Shop in Salem, New Hampshire, and we are going to talk about dog industry burnout. We're going to do dog trainer burnout, but we're going to just compile the whole dog industry.
I was going to do podcast burnout.
Scott barely got on for this podcast. He was sitting in Dave's office smoking a cigar. Chrissy almost had to step in.
I think I'm the antithesis of burnout.
Yeah, well, you are much happier than you used to be. All right, first we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day.
Hang on. That's my cue.
Good job. My quirky tip of the day is if you give your dog any type of psychiatric medication, so we're talking Prozac, Xanax, everything else. You guys know that
mushrooms.
We're not super pro-med here. I would not give your dog magic mushrooms as an FYI. If you do this, I have heard from a ton of clients over the years that are like, oh yeah, I tried that. It didn't work. We took the dog off of it. Please talk to your veterinarian about weaning your dog off of these medications. There should be a specific protocol, much like there was when you maybe chose to put your dog on these medications, just like there is with people. So the quirky tip of the day is if you are going to be weaning off of any psychiatric, psychotropic, whatever medications with your dog, please do that with the guidance of your vet. There is actually a protocol there, and it's not just we're not giving this the next day, it's over.
I always went cold turkey.
Yeah, you probably should have been medicated on more things than you have been in the past. Okay, so we're going to talk about burnout. This is something that's very common in the dog trainer industry, but this can extend to grooming, shops, daycares. Obviously, the vet industry has a lot of trouble with mental health, and it can be very strenuous. They're working with more than just dogs, even dog walkers. So we have gone through periods of time, I would say at least a pretty large chunk of a period, where we're both pretty burnt out on the whole thing. Do you agree?
Well, when we had the kennel,
when we moved into the kennel,
24/7, it got to be a bit much. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had kind of planned on backing off of in-person dog training at that point. So it was kind of like, oh, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We won't have to do this anymore. And yeah, I would say that was when we were we were both the most burnt out we had been. And what does burnout look like? I mean, you can kind of, compare it to depression, but it's basically, your frustration tolerance is lower. You're not as motivated to be doing things, within the industry. Maybe you're sleeping more often. It's just your overall motivation towards this joy that you used to find in your work is just kind of squashed, and you're burnt out, for the lack of a better way to describe it.
Yeah, you're not finding joy in your work. That's the main
Okay,
thing.
so what do we do now? What are some key tips that we do now that we lean into to stay fresh? I mean, Scott and I still do a lot of dogs. We have over 100 clients every single year. We do a ton of board and train still. We do a lot of dogs. We deal with the public a lot. We're still very much in the rigor of this industry. So what are some tips that you specifically have that help you?
Well, what I do is I like to keep in touch with clients that are doing well, that we've really made a big difference in their lives. They're very appreciative. They're enjoying their dog now that we've done some training, and the dog has responded well. So it's nice to hear good things. And I just like to keep in touch with positive people, especially my clients.
That is true. He will say, I'm going to text so-and-so and see how it's going if he's a little bit down and out. And this is something that I was thinking that could extend to all industries as well. If you're a groomer and you feel like, oh my gosh, every single client's difficult, every dog is a pain in the ass to deal with, everything. Start to lean into your clients that you really enjoy. This little tidbit that you got of hey, thanks, the dog looks great today. When you're getting this sort of feedback, it doesn't necessarily have to be for a public forum, but, save it in your photos on your phone so you can refer back to it to kind of recall these, highlights and these, joys of our career. I'll totally agree with that one. What else do you do?
Well, both of us do volunteer work on a weekly basis at a local food pantry, and I think getting outside of ourselves and outside of our industry and helping other people or trying to help other people is a good thing keeps me humble and appreciative of what I do have, as little as that may be.
Yeah, that is
times.
A good one. So leaning into your community more so. So one of the questions that I phrased for this episode is, where can you look for support if you're experiencing burnout? And what I wrote in my notes is I wouldn't look to other industry professionals. Like, it's funny when Scott and I have ever had like lulls in our career or motivation surrounding our career or something else, we talk to other people in the industry and it just kind of turns into a bitch fest. It seems like everybody's like, oh my God, I was dealing with this person the other day and, this dog has diarrhea, and it's just, we just all kind of commiserate together. So when you are looking for support, looking out to the community is a great one. And yeah, we are like hardcore. We love volunteering. A few weeks now, they had too many volunteers, and the director of volunteers was like, you guys can just grab breakfast or take the gym off. And Scott and I like aren't as good in our mental health when we don't go and volunteer on Tuesdays. So yes, that's totally a good one to look for support and to look for community outside of the dog training industry. Love it. Very good.
Well, I'm definitely, you said going to the gym. I think you threw in there at one point, or no?
I didn't say it, but it is on my list.
I like to go to the gym at least 5 or 6 days a week, and that's a good outlet for me. I don't really feel the burnout in what I do for a living, but I know in this industry it's terrible. And one of the reasons I was thinking that I don't have the burnout that many other professionals do is not because I'm handling it better, but as a dog trainer, my relationships with the dogs and the owners is a short-term relationship. It could be 4 classes, it could be a period of months, but it's not like a groomer or a daycare that just you go to work and there's like 50 dogs or 75 dogs there every day, day in, day out, quite often understaffed. You could be in this daycare situation that is actually kind of dangerous for you. You could be a young woman typically that is trying to deal with 50 dogs, new dogs coming in, trying to break up fights, trying to avoid dogs from fighting. Can be a very stressful situation. And those are the ones I think that can be a lot more, or if you're working in a rescue situation where you have all these dogs that need homes, and there's just that, it just never ends. It's like this just wave after wave of dogs coming. And then you feel like, am I really making a difference? I don't feel like I'm making a difference.
Yeah, and that's part of it.
Really,
and I'll give you that we
burnout.
have kind of short-term clients, but we still have people now that, we've known for 10 years that, come back for boarding and everything else. So if these people are in a situation, the daycare example was a great example. So you have 50 dogs, probably 20 of those dogs and owners that walk in every single morning, you legit cannot stand. So let's give some advice for that situation. How do people deal with burnout when they're living in that day-to-day?
Well, if you're an employee in that situation, I would look for new work.
Yep, 100%.
I would find another job. If I owned the daycare, I would start calling clients. I would start working through and getting rid of clients that make your life worse, not better. Life's too short, and your obligation is not to deal with a bunch of obnoxious people just because you have this business that you have. You know?
100%. And I even mentioned this in relation to, difficult grooming clients and everything else. We do not list our prices on our website for a variety of reasons, but mostly because sometimes the price is a little bit higher. If it's a really difficult dog or a super aggressive dog, or the owner isn't maybe as on board as some of our other clients, that person is going to get another price in their contract. The same thing can go for a daycare situation or a grooming situation, right? So you can literally, if you are a groomer and you have a doodle that is very difficult to groom. Our specific doodle, he's like 15. He has this like Rastafarian coat, we call it. Like, it's like literally dreadlocks. And I have gone to 3 different groomers that just give him a puppy cut. They still charge me $100, and they basically just shave it off. There are a few groomers who I really enjoy, who I really lean into. Shout out to Brittany St. Ahmad. She was on our podcast with Havoc. She is one of them that will take the time to groom him and brush through his coat and everything else. If I go longer than 6 weeks, it's going to be more of a pain in the butt for her. So if you have a client like this with a dog that's super difficult and the client would prefer not to pay every month, you can say the price will be $90 if we do it within a month. If it goes beyond 2 months, the price is $120. If it goes beyond 3 months, start charging accordingly. Same thing with the daycare. That's a great idea about calling clients. Have a once over. You can either raise prices all across the board, see who stays, see who doesn't, or you can have new policies with, your dog does not comply to what we want as a behavioral standard in this daycare, and, your dog is no longer welcome here. And sometimes that's a hard conversation to have, and sometimes people get fearful, like, oh, how will I sustain my business and everything else? The day-to-day chronic stress is not worth having this dog in your possession for another 2 to 5 years and maybe having something really dangerous happen where other dogs are injured or worse, even people.
Yeah, the biggest fear I think that businesses have these days is negative reviews and then being attacked on social media and all that kind of stuff, which can legitimately damage a business's livelihood. It can really wipe people out.
Yeah.
So you have that fear. You're trying to keep everybody happy and you're trying to put out a good service and a good product. And it can be tough. And all of that can add to the burnout.
And even the negative reviews. I mean, if you're just operating based on, oh my gosh, I don't want a bad review and I don't want to, hurt this person's feelings or anything else. I mean, Scott has said on more than one occasion at Consult, he's gone to the house for 147, within an hour of us. And he said like, I'm going to refund your money. I just don't think this is, the path that you're ready to go down. Yeah. Like, I mean, he 100% is very quick to turn money back over to the person that paid him, and just cut the deal off right then and there. And it's not like you get a lot of fallout from that. A lot of times people like honesty. And it's very easy if you get a negative review to go and to eloquently respond and to, be a professional and say how you feel. And also your clients that love you, make sure that they're giving you good reviews. So the whole negative review and being fearful of that, yes, in this day and age, it can happen, but it's happening less and less because these, basic like campaign business smears that used to be happening where everyone just attacks you kind of aren't able to happen as much from an ethical perspective. The roofer even sued someone recently, didn't they?
Yeah, but that's another issue. That gets away from the burnout. I would say.
Well, you're the one that brought up negative reviews.
Well, yeah, but the other thing I was thinking about with burnout is that can happen is if you're just you have a younger business, you're trying to build a business, you're very enthusiastic about it, and you make yourself too available all the time.
Yeah.
So you need the money, you want to build the business, you want to get things off the ground, you have overhead, you have debt, and I've done it many years where I've worked 7 days a week. And it's not that I'm working, it sounds like, wow, it's not like if you have a job and you punch in 7 days a week can add up to 75 hours a week. It's not like I'm working those kind of hours, but I'm always available. So there's people in my industry, in the dog training world, that typically it's easier for them to see me after work hours from 5 p.m. on, or weekends. So there are other people I see that I can see during the week, they're retired or they work from home. But I make myself available so those people, they say, I can only do weekends, no problem. I'm there for the weekend. But it turns into a 7-day work week where I'm always available, which leaves no life for us, no personal life to speak of. And it's easy to justify that, saying, well, I don't have money to be doing vacations anyway. I need to work. But that can get into a real rut where you're just going week after week of 100%. Work.
And when we had our facility, we took Sundays off. We didn't even do drop-offs, pickups on Sundays. That was a hard rule. So, yeah, strong boundaries with time is a good one.
I still work that 7-day-a-week type of thing, but I don't do any standing appointments with people. I really go out of my way to avoid, if people say, I want to do every Saturday at 1, and I tell them, I'll do next Saturday, and next Saturday we'll set up for the next one, because especially getting into the summer months, or it can even be in the winter, people all of a sudden they'll get this opportunity to go on a ski trip. So now they just call you Friday night and say, we're going to be gone this weekend, we need to cancel tomorrow. Or they want to go boating in the summer. Well, if I do those standing appointments, I can't do anything for the whole summer because we're only talking about 8 weeks of summer,
Or Scott's built his whole day around a specific part of the North Shore.
Yeah, I got these people to go see, so I can't go to do some family event, or we can't go to a concert in the afternoon or something because I have these things that are there. And then they cancel on me because they want to go do the fun stuff, so they just say, well, we can't, we're not doing our dog training this week.
Strong boundaries on time and no standing appointments is a good one. Okay, let's go to break super quick, and when we get back, we'll unhash this a little bit more.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
Okay, so Scott mentioned not making yourself too available, and that goes for every industry, whether you're a groomer, you're a dog walker, you're a daycare employee, you're a dog trainer, you need to definitely have some time off, and that is a good one. Another one I would say is make sure that you look at some hard rules that you have for your business. So One thing that Scott and I definitely make as like an intrinsic rule of how we function within dog training is we cannot care more than the client. So especially if we're doing board and trains, like we have these dogs in our home, these dogs basically become our family. We care greatly about the dog and its well-being and everything else, and we want it to be as harmonious as possible when that dog reunites with its owners and lives in its original home. If we are finding ourselves texting more often than them, figuring out, asking how things are, and we just seem more invested than the owner, that is a huge red flag for us that we need to back off and we need to remove ourselves from that emotionally. I think that that's a newer one that we've implemented that seems to work pretty well for us.
Yeah, and now that we're doing less volume, it's just everything is much easier. But when we were doing the volume where we had the kennel, we would get dogs that would come in for boarding and training that would come in with an ear infection. They'd come in with a rotten tooth in their head. They'd come in with some type of physical problem that we didn't know about. Maybe it wasn't there in the evaluation. For whatever reason, now we're really keeping an eye on this dog because we want them to go home in, as healthy a state as possible. We certainly don't want them to go home in any worse than the way they came in. And then we wind up calling them and having to bring their dog to the vet and getting their dog all healthy, and that kind of stuff could really burn us out, you know?
So make sure that the clients you're dealing with are well enough to be dealt with, for one. And then also that you're not investing more than they are. Like they are not, at the end of the day, your personal dogs. You cannot create that and bring that on as your own responsibility.
That goes back to us caring more than them in some ways, where they're not even
knowing these things had happened.
Or the dog has an ear infection, but they're going on vacation. They don't have time to go to the vet, so they're just like, I'll bring them to the boarding and whatever, they'll deal with it.
Yeah. So, and create hard rules for your own business. We don't have that many. I mean, Scott and I function pretty loosely in general, but I mean, literally make sure that you have some things that you're like, okay, this is no longer what I'm going to do. For instance, if you're a groomer and muzzling certain dogs are hard, the new rule could be that the owner must muzzle the dog before they come in to be groomed, or you're not going to groom the dog. Just have some things that are going to make your life easier, implement some new things. We're halfway through 2023. You can make a list of what you want 2024 to look like, or even what you're going to start the, following 6 months of this year. How do you want things to change? How can things become easier for you? Another one I mentioned, and a little trick that we have, is sandwiching clients. And again, like Scott mentioned, we're not doing the same volume we used to be doing. But if you look at your day and you're like, oh my God, Wednesday we have this dog and then this dog and then this person, and it's just like this day that you really don't even want to wake up and have to deal with these people and these dogs back to back to back. Start to put the really difficult clients in between two clients that are a little bit easier and that you really enjoy and that you really get along with on a social level. Start to schedule yourself in such a way that's going to promote wellness and foster wellness throughout your day, and not just make it one difficult case after another ornery person, after another, super aggressive large breed dog.
When you said sandwich, I wasn't thinking that at all. I think about, since I'm traveling to people's homes, I just think about locations and travel. So I have people on the North Shore of Mass. I definitely want to get 2 of them, 3 of them, ideally 3 of them on the same day, which is great because it's one trip down and then it's 10 minutes to each client. The thing that burns me out is if I have to have a client in Portland, Maine, and then one in Boston, on the same day. It's like, why did I do this to myself? How did I set this up, Yeah.
And if we're going to Marblehead, we're going to Marblehead to see more than one person. I'm just going to say that right now. Marblehead is a very, very far distance, no matter where you live, especially when you live in Elliott, Maine. All right, let's get back to some more things that you can do personally for wellness and everything else. We've been at this for you and I have been doing this together for 12 years. You've been doing this for over 20 years. The things that promote wellness. So Scott mentioned the gym. That's a great one. If fitness is your thing, or just as a personal goal, that's a great thing. Have goals outside of the business. This is so important. And even the people that are really into dog training and everything else, personally, they'll sometimes have their own personal dog training goals. You might compete in protection or agility or something else. Sometimes even that is too much. It's just too much overlap to have dogs, hot dogs from, classes in the morning still in your pocket. Now you're using them for your dog. Have some goals completely outside of dogs. So fitness is Scott's jam. He loves going to the gym. Hobbies are really important to explore. They do not have to be, again, dog training situations with your own dog. Scott likes to draw. I like to do puzzles. Where are your hobbies? Go and seek these things that provide wellness for you that have nothing to do with dogs in any way, shape, or form, and do them regularly. Schedule them into your life for your own sanity.
Yeah, I have a couple of weed plants I'm growing right now.
Yes, he does like
really
growing his plants.
I really enjoy growing weed.
He does.
So it doesn't require a lot of effort, but it does require attention. If you ignore them, they're going to get eaten by bugs. They need a daily once over.
Yeah.
That once over could take just a few minutes, but if you don't do it, things can go south real quick.
Yeah.
So it demands your attention. It's a meditative type thing.
Yeah, and Scott hasn't smoked personally for years now. We still have weed from 2 years ago when he grew, but he likes the activity of growing and trimming and all of these things. And that is the point that I was heading towards. I'm glad you brought up. There's a mindfulness aspect to that, you guys. If you do not have any sort of mindfulness practice within your own lives, please look into that. Please lean into that. I don't care if you just sit with your phone on airplane mode for a minute and a half a day. You're starting to get somewhere. When we meditate, it's not like we're levitating up to the sky and feeling all great and airy afterwards, but we do put into our schedules this quiet time, whether it's with dogs or without. There's quiet time where we're reflecting on our own lives and we're having a moment of mindfulness. We're tuning out the outside world, especially nowadays. Everything is just sensory. Start to tune out. We have mentioned floating before. We're huge fans of sensory deprivation tanks. We used to own one. We float sometimes. That's a good way to practice mindfulness. There's a lot of apps that you can look into, meditative apps like Calm, EFT apps like the tapping solution I mentioned before. You can freaking go to online therapy. I don't care what it is, but make sure that you are giving yourself the support that you need. And it doesn't have to be this big high dollar bill, right? There's absolutely no cost of turning your phone on airplane mode and sitting for 2 minutes with your eyes closed. I don't care if you're buzzing the whole time. I don't care if you're just waiting for the alarm to go off the whole time. It is a start. I promise you it is a start, and it will lead you into this mindfulness practice.
Well, I'll tell you something that's more fun than that.
God, I don't know where we're going.
We have a fire pit, and we like to get down and get a little fire going. I'll have a cigar. Jess will have a glass of wine, and she'll do her word search, and we'll just hang out there for an hour and and we'll have our dogs out there. They'll hang out with us, and we just decompress for an hour, maybe 2 hours. It's nice.
When I said to Scott, I'm like, what are you going to tell people to do? He goes, I think I'm going to tell people to start smoking cigars. That was going to be his big advice. But literally, yes, this moment of, we don't have phones out by the fire pit. There's not some podcast going in the background, all of this other stuff. And why is it that there is so much burnout within dogs and within the industry and everything else? Dogs are difficult. Dogs are not bred as well as they used to be. Owners are not as equipped to own dogs as they used to be. The support is not as unanimous as it used to be. Like, it is a clusterfuck sometimes out there. We get it. We live it. And there's a lot of emotions that go with the dog, right? You have owners, you have kids, you have this whole family, and it's all centralized around, the dog's freaking me out, the dog's stressing me out. So there is more of a prevalence of burnout within these dog-related industries than some other industries. And that's fine to recognize. If you're not already involved in the industries, maybe don't jump right in, because it's not just playing with puppies, I can promise you. But you need to have tools, and you need to have certain ways that you live your life and that you're navigating your life so you can tolerate it and you can enjoy it. And I would say, really, right now in our lives, we're pretty grateful for what we do, and we feel pretty darn good about what we do, and we're pretty happy to wake up every day and be dog trainers.
I've been doing it for a long time. I don't see myself getting out of it for a long time, if ever. But it's an emotional business, and whenever there's you're involved in an emotional business, it can be taxing. And people love their dogs. Dogs are emotional creatures. We want the dog to feel. We feel like crap when we have a dog in that has a lot of fear, that doesn't want to eat, is just totally depressed looking. If they're bummed out, and we want to get them out of their shell. We want to get them feeling good about themselves. We're trying to get some training into them, yes, but we want them to be
emotionally stable.
Just feel good. You don't even have to be happy. Just exist calmly, and don't be like.
Just don't be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to take a treat, and it's a bummer, and we got to work them through all this stuff. And sometimes it gets better before it gets worse before it gets better. But having done it for so long, that doesn't even cause a huge amount of stress, except that, one thing we did a couple of years back is we agreed to no longer take dogs with human aggression. Where I used to take, if I could handle your dog, I didn't care, so unless there were children in the house. If that dog had bit the mailman and had some bites and a bite history, if I could get my hands on the leash and I could work the dog effectively, I'd say, listen, I'll take the dog and work him. I don't know how it's going to look on the other end, but I would take him. But one thing I wasn't considering is that Jess has to handle that same dog when I'm out doing a client somewhere else. And we had some dogs where it was touchy, where Jess almost got bit pretty good a couple of occasions. And we agreed we're no longer going to take those dogs. It's not worth her getting hurt.
I wouldn't say that's a hard rule because we still do train human aggressive dogs, but we are on the same page about the dogs we take into our home.
I did take a dog. You know, it's a case-by-case basis, but there are some dogs that they're tough.
Yeah, and we have no problem saying no at this point, and we don't have to be the heroes. If someone else wants to jump up and be the hero, and I guess that's the thing, if your ego is intersecting into this industry in any way, shape, or form that no one else was able to do it, I'm going to step up and I'm going to be the one to do it, that's a big red flag that you're going to be experiencing burnout and you're not in this for the long haul. So be very conscientious of where your headspace is coming from and where your motive is coming from. Our motive is always pretty coming from a place of humility for the most part, and we're just like, we're here to help. We want to do the best we can for the dog and the owner. And lastly, if you do have some sort of board and train business or, you know, this really hands-on kind of business where the dogs are coming, you know, into your circle, I will tell you guys, inviting the dogs in has been more beneficial to us than, you know, they're, you know, in a separate building in a barn with cameras or they're in a facility or something else. Having the dogs actually within our home, with us, with our energy, I think has been more fulfilling and more beneficial to the dogs. There are many times when I'm doing last call at night where I'll bring a dog into the bedroom. It's really fearful or it's a cute little puppy or whatever. And I'm like, you know, so-and-so wants to say goodnight to daddy. Like, we're inviting those dogs into our family and we're making those dogs become a part of our own, you know, peaceful like unit or whatever you want to call it. And that has really helped, at least for me, in our headspace. And it's helped the dog's energy and it's helped the dogs acclimate. And it's just helped the whole thing be more, more cohesive rather than like, oh, we're going to go out, we're going to train now, and oh, finally I'm done, and we just have our own dogs in the house. And our dogs deal with it. Our dogs are very well trained, and they can deal with that kind of energy too. But that for us has been very, Scott's dogs are so. That for us has been very cathartic, and that has been a good point of wellness for us. And I'm not saying everyone should do that. I'm not saying, you know, get a bunch of dogs in your kitchen or your living room or your meditation room. But for us personally, the dogs being more in our circle has been more healing than pushing them out, I would say.
Yeah, and I will say, just getting back to the aggression real quick, if you as the trainer are the only person that can really work well with that dog, how much are you really helping?
Yeah.
Because we can't take all of them. We can't keep all the dogs.
Yeah.
And if the dog can go in public and everywhere with you and it on excellent behavior, but then with the owners, they just can't maintain the type of rigorous structure that the dog may need, it's not going to help. You know?
No, that's totally true. So we feel you. We've been there. If you are experiencing burnout in any way, shape, or form, please look for some resources and do not necessarily just go to other dog trainers because that's just going to be a lot of bitching. So try to find things that are going to help you, help your headspace, find fulfillment on a day-to-day basis, and be grateful. Overall, we are grateful for our clients, for what we've accomplished, for what we are going to be seeing in the future, and for the fact that we get to keep learning. So we hear you, we see you, we are proud of you, and we support you. Anything else?
Yeah, get yourself one of these pigs. Because this will really help.
Squeak the pig. It's good for wellness. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next week. Next week, we are supposed to have a couple of our very good friends coming in from New York. We're going to do a big live podcast all together. And in the meantime, keep it quirky.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.